What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good day. The Champions League starts tomorrow, which is the biggest prize in world football. And at the beginning of every major tournament, I like to take a look at the bets for the whole tournament because you can often find some pretty good value stuff. Bets like which teams could potentially win the whole tournament, which players could finish top goal scorer, and other bets like which teams are more likely to qualify out of the group stages. So we're going to be going through all of the tournament bets in this video, and hopefully we can dig up some good value bets where we can make a bit of cash. I did do one of these videos back on the World Cup all the way back in November now, and we did pretty well off the prop bets featured in that video, and hopefully we can do the same with these Champions League bets as well. I'll also be dropping a video for the Europa League and the Europa Conference League in the next couple of days, so I'll leave links for those in the description below. And as many of you know, I'm trying to transition away from betting on the UFC into football. So I've been betting football pretty seriously for the last 2 years now, doing reasonably well at it, and hopefully we can make some profits off these Champions League bets to make this year go a bit better. So the odds that I'm going to be using are going to be from Bet365. I thought Bet365 would be the best betting site to use since they're the biggest online betting site in the world by a mile. And obviously because we're looking at more longer term bets, the odds will differ a little bit from site to site, but Bet365, pretty good guide. What I would say about my approach to placing bets of this nature though is that I'm not looking necessarily at most likely outcomes, because the kind of props that we're placing on the Champions League are more long-term bets. I'm looking for undervalued gems where you're getting a very good risk to reward ratio. So an example straight away, if we look at the odds on teams to win the Champions League outright, obviously Manchester City are the favourites at odds of 3.0 plus 200. They're the best team in the world. They won the treble last season. On top of that, they've strengthened their squad this year with Guardiola, who's one of the best centre-backs in the world. They've picked up Doku to give them pace out wide, which, to be honest, they didn't have last season. I know that pace doesn't always benefit Man City that much because every team sticks 150 men behind the ball, and so it's very difficult for them to get in behind. But having a different kind of player like Doku this season definitely gives them some strength in depth. But odds of 3.0 plus 200 to win the whole tournament isn't very good in my opinion, even though I do agree Man City are the most likely team to win. It's extremely rare that a team will win the Champions League in back-to-back years, and you know, in a tournament that's so competitive with so many amazing players, so many amazing teams, for me that's just very, very poor value. So the kind of bets we're going to be looking at when we go through these Champions League bets are going to be more like under the radar gems where there's better value, better risk to reward ratio in the odds. So let's start off by taking a look at the odds on the teams that are most likely to win the Champions League. So looking at the odds, what we've got this year, I'm quite surprised that the odds on Real Madrid are as generous as they are. 9.0 plus 800. I quite like that. Real Madrid are in the title, or are in the Champions League title picture almost every year. Most seasons they make it until, you know, at least the semi-final stage. So if you take a bet on Real Madrid to win the tournament outright, obviously betting on any of these teams to bet a tournament as competitive as the Champions League outright is risky. But by taking a team like Real Madrid that you know usually go very deep in the tournament, you're very likely to find yourself in a position where by the time you get to like the quarterfinals, you may be able to hedge out of the bet or cash out of the bet at profit. It's not going to be that easy to make a good return doing that on a team like Manchester City, because if you bet them to win outright, their odds are already 3.0 plus 200. So even though you'll still probably be able to make a profit if you get to the quarterfinal, semi-final stage, there isn't going to be as much meat on the bone for you. Whereas if you take a team like Real Madrid, you'll probably have a pretty big profit margin if they made it to the semi-finals, if you wanted to hedge a little bit to guarantee, you know, a profit if they were to potentially lose a semi-final game. or a final game. That's a different strategy entirely. But I really like Real Madrid at 9.0 plus 800 because for me, they've got a lot of balance throughout the team. They've got a pretty solid defence. Midfield, excellent. Jude Bellingham has really taken the midfield of Real Madrid to the next level. And even though they are a little bit light up front, they don't really have a striker at the moment. They haven't really replaced Benzema. Rodrigo, Vinicius Jr. are still a big threat out wide. They've got goal-scoring midfielders. And remember that the knockout games for the Champions League don't start until February. And with how light Real Madrid are up front, I wouldn't be surprised if they brought someone in January, if they made a big sign-in, brought in a big striker in January, which would obviously then help bolster their chances of going even deeper in the Champions League. You know, if you look up front, they're definitely light up front. There's no getting away from that, but extremely strong in defence, extremely strong in midfield. And even though they don't have Courtois this season, who's been incredible for them, as a goalkeeper in the Champions League, I don't think Kepa's anywhere near as bad as people make him out to be. And I think Real Madrid at 9.0 plus 800 gives you the nice balance between a team that realistically can go very deep and are very capable of winning it, but you also get, pretty decent odds as well. And like I say, if they get to, say, the semi-finals and they drew Man City, which is obviously a very difficult game, you could probably hedge out at a profit because of the odds you're able to get them at early doors. The only other team, you could see Bayern Munich 6.50 plus 550. For me, Bayern Munich are a very strong team. Obviously, have got a lot of goals in them. They're very dangerous going forward, but I don't see Bayern Munich winning the Champions League just because they're too dodgy at the back. They concede a goal or two in pretty much every game in the Bundesliga, and if you're conceding 1 or 2 goals in pretty much every game in the Bundesliga, when you start to play the best teams in the world in the Champions League, that's going to cost you big time. I think Bayern Munich are way too open. I just don't give them a realistic chance of winning, so they're not that interesting to me. So yeah, Real Madrid outright, we like it. Now let's look at the odds on the top goal scorer for the whole tournament. So again, obviously everyone's going to agree that Erling Haaland is most likely to finish top goal scorer. The guy is an absolute goal machine, and not only that, but Man City are in a pretty weak group. They're in the same group as Young Boys, obviously Swiss team that concede a lot of goals. The style of Swiss football is very, very open. So even if Young Boys wanted to sit deep, park the bus, make life difficult for City, it just would be very difficult for them because it's not the way they play. It's not in their DNA. They're very, very open. So Young Boys are going to concede a lot of goals against City. Now, Red Star Belgrade, obviously Serbian football, it's a lot tighter. They are a lot more well organised. They will sit very, very deep, make life difficult for City, but City again should be able to get past them. And obviously, as soon as that first goal goes in, the floodgates will then open. And then RB Leipzig, exactly like Bayern Munich, they're extremely dangerous going forward, but very, very vulnerable at the back. And they also concede a decent number of goals, especially because Man City signed their best defender, Guardiola, in the summer, right? So they're not as strong at the back as they were last season. Leipzig play very, very open football, which is the exact opposite of what you should do against Man City. And of course, they'll probably adjust their tactics and be a lot more defensive against City. But at the end of the day, it's not in their DNA to play like that. So it's not like if you're playing a Spanish team or a Portuguese team that are very comfortable with that style and that system, you're going to be asking Leipzig players to play in a way that they never play. And to do that for the first time against the best team in the world like City, not an easy thing to do. So yes, Haaland is probably going to score an absolute boatload of goals. And my approach for betting these top goal scorer kind of bets for the whole tournament is to really look at which teams have got the easiest path to go into the knockout stages, right? And which players are likely to going to have opportunities to score a lot of goals. So when you look at Man City's group, you know that Haaland is going to score a lot of goals because of the fact that, he's going up against Leipzig and Young Boys who play very, very open. There's going to be goals in that group for Haaland. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Unfortunately, his odds are absolutely terrible. And we've got to think about the fact that this is probably going to be a pretty easy group for City. So, once City gets some points on the board, they'll probably look to rest Haaland, save him for those tough games in the Premier League. Alvarez can step up and start to be the main striker in some of these games. We know Pep likes to rotate. And so there's no way that Haaland's going to play every group game because they should sail through. They don't need him. On top of that, Haaland could get injured, right? And at odds of 2.20 plus 120, if he gets injured, your money goes up in flames. So if we see some of the other favourites in the top goal scorer category, Kylian Mbappe is obviously always going to be in the discussion. In my opinion, he's the best player in the world. He's absolutely unbelievable. But PSG are having a tough season. Obviously, there's a lot of problems off the pitch. And we've seen PSG struggle in the league this year. So again, like what I said with Bayern Munich, where they're conceding a lot of goals in the Bundesliga, if PSG are struggling domestically in the French league, imagine how badly they could struggle when they start to face the best teams in the world in the Champions League. And so I also think PSG's group is very difficult. Dortmund leak a lot of goals, there's no doubt about that, but they're dangerous going forward. They work very hard. They're always up for it as well. Whereas Paris Saint-Germain are a little bit flaky, a little bit inconsistent. Inter Milan are going to be well organised, difficult to play against. And Newcastle, solid at the back, difficult to play against, well organised as well. So even though Mbappe is, for me, the best player in the world, we obviously bet him to finish top goal scorer in the World Cup. He came through for us big time. For me, he's off the table here. His odds of 5.0 plus 400 are not that attractive to me. And on top of that, his group is very, very difficult. There's not going to be as many goals in this group for Mbappe as what you'll find in Haaland's group. And I wouldn't even be surprised if PSG struggle to make it out of the group. I think they're the favourites to win the group, but this is a very, very tough group. Obviously, AC Milan went deep in the tournament last year. Newcastle, very, very strong this year. Dortmund aren't the same without Bellingham, but they're no picnic either. So, tough group for PSG. If we look at the other candidates that could potentially finish top goal scorer, for me, Harry Kane is very interesting here for a couple of reasons. Now, I don't love his odds. 5.0 plus 400 is not amazing. I like those Real Madrid to win outright type odds of 9.0 plus 800, because then as the tournament progresses, you have an opportunity to hedge out for guaranteed profit if your bet starts to not look as strong. But for me, Harry Kane 5.0 plus 400 is a pretty good bet, because if we look at Bayern Munich's group, similar sort of story really to Man City's group. Now, I wouldn't say this group is as weak as Man City's group, but I can definitely see Harry Kane scoring a lot of goals in this group. Man United are having a tough year. They're conceding a lot of goals at the moment. Copenhagen, when they play in the Champions League, they do switch their strategy, their style from how they play at domestic level. They are a lot more negative, a lot more defensive in the Champions League, but they're not good enough to stop Bayern Munich from scoring. I mean, we saw Sparta Prague and Rakow terrorise them in the qualifying stages, and obviously Bayern Munich are a different level to Sparta Prague and Rakow. So Kane very likely to get goals against Copenhagen as well. And then we know Turkish football is extremely open. It's just like Swiss football, just like German football. In fact, it's even more open than German football. Very, very, very open. So even if Galatasaray wanted to play more negatively, sit deep, it's just not in their DNA. It's not going to be easy for them to make that adjustment and stay well organised. So I think Harry Kane's got the potential to score a lot of goals in the group stages, which is huge for giving him a good chance of finishing top goal scorer in the whole tournament, because Bayern can go deep. On top of that, Harry Kane's on penalty duty, so he's going to potentially get more goals through penalties. I mean, we saw the impact that being on penalty duty had with Lionel Messi in the World Cup, right? Lionel Messi barely scored a goal from open play in the World Cup, but he finished joint top goal scorer with Mbappe, because Argentina just won so many penalties, and since Messi was on penalty duty, he was able to get a lot of goals that way. So the same applies to Harry Kane here. On top of that, Bayern also don't have the strength in depth that Manchester City do. So with this group being more competitive than Man City's group, and with Bayern not having the strength in depth that Man City have, I think it's less likely Harry Kane will get rested for the group games. If anything, I think it's more likely he'd be rested in his domestic games at Bundesliga. So yeah, I think Kane's going to score a lot of goals in this tournament, so I quite like him. 5.0 plus 400. Would have liked better odds, but it is what it is. Just looking at some other options. Again, Goncalo Ramos scored a lot of goals for Portugal in the World Cup at 26.0 plus 2,500. If PSG were doing better, that could be a nice outside shot. But for me, I think PSG will struggle this year. Lewandowski hasn't been playing well for Barcelona or Poland, so I'm not interested in that. Victor Osimhen, let's take a look at Napoli's group. Union Berlin, Braga, Real Madrid, they should go through there actually. So Osimhen, not a bad outside shout actually at 26.0 plus 2,500. And again, I'm just looking at like outside shots where it's not particularly likely Osimhen will finish top goal scorer, but those odds very, very juicy. And again, a strategy that you can use for making money on these top goal scorer props is if you see a player which you think is going to score a lot of goals in the group stages and you think the team has got a good chance of going deep, if you bet them, say you bet Victor Osimhen at 26.0 plus 2,500 and you think Napoli are going to go deep in the tournament, well, say he scores a decent amount of goals in the group stages and Napoli make it to the quarterfinals, the odds on Osimhen to finish top goal scorer will probably decline down to like 10.0 plus 1,000 plus 900, something like that, because obviously there's less teams, less players in the tournament, and then you can cash out or hedge out for profit. So it's worth taking a look at some bets like this, you know, to see if there's any opportunities to cash out the longer you go. Someone like Julian Alvarez, as an example, 41.0 plus 4,000. Will Julian Alvarez finish top goal scorer? No, but Man City are in a very weak group. He's likely to score a lot of goals, especially if they rest Haaland. You know, Alvarez is going to start for Man City, and again, you know, if Man City make it to the semi-finals, which they're very likely to, you might be able to hedge out a Julian Alvarez if his odds on finishing top goal scorer decline to like 20.0 plus 1,900. So I think what we'll do on the top goal scorer and the win outright front, we'll take a look at the group odds, and then once we take a look at the groups and we work out which teams are likely to make it out of the groups, we can come back, have another look at the outrights, another look at the top goal scorers to see if there's any opportunities to place some bets at huge odds where, you know, we know that, for example, Alexander Isak isn't going to finish top goal scorer in the Champions League, but it doesn't mean Newcastle can't make it to the quarterfinals and then you can't make a nice profit cashing out. So we'll come back to that in a bit. We'll have like a second round. So I think Harry Kane's very likely to finish top goal scorer, and we'll look at some more props for hedges and cash out profits in a bit. To reach final, this is always a tricky one, right? Because even though I think Real Madrid are going to do very well this year, if they run into Man City in the quarterfinals, they obviously won't get it, or they might beat Man City, but, you know, they might get knocked out in the quarterfinals and then, you know, I'm going to make it to the final. So we'll give those odds a miss on to reach the final. That's a little bit tricky for me. Group betting. So I really like to bet on the groups, because what I find with group betting is a lot of the time the odds are set on stuff like this based on like name value. For example, we know PSG are struggling pretty bad this year. We also know that Atletico Madrid haven't been great this year, yet out of sheer legacy, because historically PSG, Atletico tend to go pretty deep in the Champions League, they're favourites to win the group. And it doesn't, these odds aren't necessarily focusing on form and how teams are looking this season. So you can get good opportunities here. So what we're going to do, these odds are on teams to win each group. So Bayern Munich 1.50 minus 200. I like that. I like it quite a lot. I would bet that personally. I like it. I think that the way that these teams are playing at the moment, Bayern Munich are full of confidence. They score a lot of goals. Their form is very strong. They're obviously the German champions. Man United are a good team in Europe, right? And realistically, Man United are probably the only threat to Bayern Munich winning this group. The reason why I quite like a bet on Bayern Munich, though, at 1.50 minus 200, is at the moment, Man United are a team, they're very low in confidence. They've got a lot of problems off the pitch. You know, Jadon Sancho issues, owner issues with Anthony, obviously his sexual assault allegations, which is keeping him from playing at the moment. So while Man United probably have a stronger squad than Bayern Munich, they don't have the confidence, they don't have the same team spirit, and the Premier League fixtures are harder than the Bundesliga, right? Let's be realistic. So Bayern Munich could maybe afford to rest key players in Bundesliga and save them from the Champions League, whereas that's going to be a lot more difficult for Man United to do. So I would take Bayern Munich at 1.50 minus 200, because when Bayern Munich have got to go to, Galatasaray, Copenhagen, pick up points, I think they'll have no problem doing it. But when United are low on confidence, it's not going to be easy for them to travel away, go places like Galatasaray, go places like Copenhagen, and get to 3 points. These teams are going to make life very difficult for them. So you could see Man United dropping points away from home more than you could see Bayern Munich dropping points away from home. So I quite like Bayern Munich at 1.50 minus 200. Into Group B. So Group B is a group where I think there's an opportunity to get a bit of a decent risk to reward ratio on an outside bet. So for me, the odds on Arsenal to win the group, 1.50 minus 200, way too steep. Will Arsenal win the group? Most likely they will, yes. But for me, the odds on Sevilla at 5.50 plus 450, pretty generous. I quite like that. Sevilla always tend to perform well in Europe. Spanish teams, solid at the back, well organised. They've got goals in them. En-Nesyri absolutely banging them in this season. I think Sevilla at 5.50 plus 450 gives you that nice balance of a team that isn't the most likely to win the group, but very, very generous odds. And again, if they start the group strong, let's look at the fixtures. Right? So where's this group? There we go. So let's look at the fixtures. So Sevilla have got Lens at home in their first game. Lens have been struggling really bad this season. They've lost some key players to Saudi Arabian clubs. Match day 2, match day 2, where are we? PSV away. PSV concede a lot of goals. I could see Sevilla getting points there. Arsenal have got PSV home first game, Sevilla away third game, Lens away second game. So that doesn't really back up my hope that Sevilla may start the group very strong and be top of the group in the first half of games. Because if that's the case, again, you may be able to hedge out of Sevilla or cash out for guaranteed profit. Let me explain to you what I mean, right? Because we'll use this strategy for all the other group betting. Here we've got Arsenal as steep favourites to win the group. We've got Sevilla, big underdogs to win the group. As the group games play out, these odds are going to change. So, for example, if PSV beat Arsenal in their first game and they go top of the group, the odds on Arsenal to win the group are going to get better because there's less games for them to get enough points to win the group, and the odds on PSV are going to decline. If you bet PSV to win the group right now at 7.0 plus 600, and then they beat Arsenal in their first game, and the odds drop on PSV to win the group to 3.0 plus 200, you can cash out the difference as a profit. So that's a really good strategy on these these long-term tournament bets. So when you're looking at Sevilla, what I was thinking is if Sevilla have got really favourable fixtures early in the group, Arsenal have got difficult fixtures, might be a situation where Sevilla come out the gate really hard, start doing really well, they go top of the group, and then maybe Sevilla's odds to win the group decline to like 2.0 plus 100, and then you could cash out as a profit. But Arsenal and Sevilla's start is pretty much the same. They've both got very favourable home games for the first round of fixtures. Sevilla and Arsenal, I would expect them both to beat Lens and PSV. And then going away in the second round of games, going away to PSV is a much harder game than going away to Lens. So, yeah, that theory isn't going to work, but we may be able to apply it to other groups when we get into it. So, sprinkle a little bit on Sevilla to win that group, nothing major. Group C, Real Madrid, Napoli, Braga, and Union Berlin. So, I would expect Napoli and Real Madrid to sail through here. I would also expect Real Madrid to win the group, but for me, I don't know if I would bet it at 1.53, just because Napoli are obviously, you know, it's a difficult place to go, Naples. Yeah, those odds are too steep on Real Madrid for me. I wouldn't take that. And I don't think there's enough meat on the bone on Napoli's odds to play that game of trying to go for cash out hedging profit later into the group. So we'll give that a miss. Group D, Inter Milan, Benfica, Real Sociedad, and FC Salzburg. Tricky. Again, I would avoid this group simply because while Inter Milan are more likely to win this group, we know that it's very difficult to play against Portuguese and Spanish teams. They're very, very well organised, very solid defensively, very difficult to play with, or play against, and so you could easily drop points going away to Benfica or Real Sociedad. I wouldn't touch Inter Milan personally. Group E, Atletico Madrid, Lazio, Feyenoord, and Celtic. So, this is an interesting group. It's an interesting group because if we look at Atletico Madrid's squad, now obviously Atletico Madrid are consistently an absolute nightmare to play against, right? There's no way to dress it up. It's never fun playing against Atletico Madrid. They are a nightmare. But for me personally, there's not a lot of absolute quality in this team. Like when you go through the Atletico Madrid squad, for me, there's not a whole lot of match winners in there. Just that's personally how I feel. Obviously, Antoine Griezmann, you know, he's a great player, but he's not like a Haaland, a Harry Kane, a Jude Bellingham. You know, for me, there's no one in this Atletico Madrid team that is really... I don't want to use the expression world class, but for me, Atletico Madrid are difficult to play against because they're well organised and they're obviously very difficult to deal with at home. But I don't think they have the same quality as pretty much any other team that is favoured this much to win the group. They just don't have the same match winners that you know, like an Odegaard, a Saka, a Martinelli, you know, an Nketiah, you know, that Arsenal have got in a similar odds range, right? Lazio at 4.0 is interesting to me in this group. Now, Lazio are a bit dodgy at the back, but they've got a lot more firepower than Atletico Madrid. Obviously, Immobile is their talisman. You know, he's a goal scorer. He's a match winner. The odds just a little bit short. I don't know. I don't love it. I don't love Lazio to win the group, but I definitely wouldn't be touching Atletico Madrid at 1.57. Then in the Group F, we've got PSG, Newcastle United, AC Milan, and Borussia Dortmund. Very interesting. And again, look, I might be completely wrong on this. I could be completely wrong, but I think Paris Saint-Germain are going to struggle very badly this year. I know they've got the best player in the world in Kylian Mbappe, but they're just very poor defensively, very disorganized, and there's just a bunch of mercenaries, man, that don't play particularly well together. This is a tricky one for me. I personally feel out of the 4 clubs, it's more likely Newcastle will win this group. But I don't love the odds because it is such a competitive group. You know, you could easily drop points going away to any of these clubs. And it's such a competitive group that I would just give this one a miss. Because realistically, with most groups, you can narrow it down to 2 clubs to win the group, right? Group F is probably the only group out of all the groups where literally any one of these teams could win the group, and it wouldn't surprise me. So we'll give Group F a miss. In terms of Group G, Man City 1.10, they will win this group, but those odds obviously unplayable. And then Group H, Barcelona, Porto, Shakhtar Donetsk, and Antwerp. Yeah, Barcelona should sail through there, to be fair. I wouldn't bother with any of the other 3. So there's some group bets for you. Now let's take a look at my personal favourite type of... where is it gone? Sorry about that, guys. My personal favourite type of bet on any major tournament, which is going to be teams to qualify. I'm getting a lot of lag on this, sorry guys. Teams to qualify from the groups. I do tend to do pretty well on this type of bet. We did pretty well on these kind of bets in the World Cup, and hopefully we can follow it up on the Champions League. So what we're betting on here is basically which teams are going to qualify from each group. So obviously 2 teams qualify from every group, teams that finish top. And we want to look at which teams out of all of these teams are most likely to qualify out of the group stages. So, Group A, Bayern Munich should qualify very easily, but their odds are going to be terrible. What are the odds? Yeah, to qualify 1.12. What are the odds on Man United? 1.20. Terrible. Okay, so we can't touch those. I'd be surprised if Copenhagen or Galatasaray made it out. Sevilla and Arsenal should go through here. Let's take a look. Arsenal, terrible odds. Sevilla, ooh, okay. Here we go. This is why I really like bets such as this. So Sevilla at 1.90 minus 110. I like that a lot. I like it a lot. Lens are really struggling this year. Lens are struggling very bad this year. Like I say, they've lost some key players to Saudi Arabian clubs. PSV, amazing home form. Isn't easy to go to PSV. But Dutch teams play very open. They leak a lot of goals. And I think they will struggle against a more well-organised Sevilla. So I like that. I like that a lot. I'm surprised the odds are that generous. I would take Sevilla 1.90 minus 110. I like that a lot. That's probably my favourite bet I've found on this video so far. Group C, I'm guessing... I'd be very surprised if Braga and Union Berlin were to qualify. Both teams have lost key players over the summer. Union Berlin in particular struggling very bad this year compared to last season. Napoli and Real Madrid going to be mad favourites though. Yeah, Napoli and Real Madrid... yeah. You know what we could look at though, guys? There could be some opportunities for some parlays with these bets. So, you know me, I don't like parlays, but you could get some pretty juicy parlays off here. So we will take a look at it. The reason why I'm not the biggest fan of parlays usually is because, say for example, you bet parlays on teams to win on a Saturday. Well, football's such a chaotic sport. It only takes a red card, something like that. Your bet's dead in the water if you're doing these big, you know, multiple leg parlays, accumulators, basically. What I like about parlays and accumulators on lines like this is that you have more games for the variance to play out, right? So if Real Madrid play Union Berlin away and Jude Bellingham gets sent off in the first 10 minutes and they get beat 2-0, they can still qualify out the group because they've got another 4 games to make up for that bit of variance, that bit of bad luck. Whereas if you bet Real Madrid in a parlay or accumulator alongside other teams to win that day, well, that blows up your whole parlay accumulator. We'll take a look at a few of these. In terms of props, yeah, the odds on Real Madrid and Napoli are dead, but we will have a look at some props. Next group, Inter Milan, Benfica, Salzburg, Real Sociedad. So Milan should go through there. Out of the next 3, for me, Benfica are probably more likely to go through than Salzburg or Real Sociedad, but it will be difficult to call because Sociedad, again, Spanish team, well organised, difficult to play against, never fun. Let's take a look. So Benfica 1.57. Guessing Inter Milan will be very steep. 1.30. Yeah, we'll avoid that. And then you've got who was the other one? Sociedad 2.37. Yes. Benfica 1.57. I would give that a miss. Salzburg have got a lot of goals in them. Sociedad are well organised. For me, there's enough danger in that group to not want to take Benfica at big favourite odds. Group E, Atletico Madrid, Feyenoord, Lazio, Celtic. Let us take a look at the odds here. I'm guessing Atletico and Lazio will be pretty big favourites. So Atletico 1.16, Lazio 1.66. Not bad at all. Not bad. Feyenoord. What are the odds on Feyenoord? 2.75. I'd actually bet Lazio 1.66. I quite like that. So the two, I really like Lazio to qualify. I really like, who is the other one? Sevilla. Lazio and Sevilla to qualify. I like that a lot. Group F, the group of death. For me, this is the toughest group, the most competitive group. Paris Saint-Germain, Borussia Dortmund, AC Milan, Newcastle United. Let's take a look at the odds. So before looking at the odds, I'm going to tell you who I think are the 2 teams most likely to qualify out of the group here. I think Newcastle United will qualify out the group because for me, there's issues with the other 3 clubs. The other 3 clubs might be bigger, but PSG have got a lot of problems off the pitch. Borussia Dortmund leak a lot of goals and they're not the same since losing Haaland and also Bellingham. And AC Milan are very inconsistent. So for me, Newcastle United, St James's Park is going to be an absolute fortress for home games. It's going to be very, very difficult to get anything at Newcastle. So they can bank on picking up some good points in their home games. And then they're just well organised with quality all over the pitch. It's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy for the opposition when they go away either. So Newcastle United to qualify 1.80 minus 125. I like it a lot. I like it. We've got 3 really solid bets on these group props actually. Now in terms of the other PSG Milan Borussia Dortmund, it is tricky because when you've got 2 clubs that don't make it out of the group, they'd usually be weak clubs, which AC Milan, Dortmund, Paris Saint-Germain definitely are not. You'd think PSG would raise their game for Champions League games and look a lot better than they do in the league at the moment. Mbappe always raises his game for the big ones, right? But I'm guessing the odds on PSG will be terrible. They are. Yeah, I don't know about who would go through with Newcastle. I'm pretty confident Newcastle will go through, which is interesting because I know they're an outsider, but trust me, Newcastle's home form, their confidence, their team spirit, it's going to carry them through. It'll be very, very difficult to go to Newcastle and pick up points. Group G, Man City, Leipzig, Red Star Belgrade, and Young Boys of Bern. Let's take a look. Man City's going to be mad odds. Anyway, 1.01. Oh my god. 1.01. Hilarious. Bet £100, $100 on Man City, and if they make it out of the group, you win the princely sum of £1. Very, very nice. Okay. Leipzig should sail through with them, and they're going to be big favourites, and they RB Leipzig 1.16. Yeah, that group is dead. Group H, Barcelona, Porto, Shakhtar Donetsk, and Antwerp. Porto and Barcelona should sail through here. Shakhtar Donetsk, obviously a Ukrainian club, which is very difficult for them at the moment. It's very difficult to sign players. They have to play their home games in different countries, so they're at a big disadvantage. A lot of their key players have obviously left as well due to the war in Ukraine. So Shakhtar Donetsk probably going to struggle a fair bit. Antwerp, Belgian club, concede a lot of goals, play very open football. They will struggle against the very well organised Barcelona and Porto. So I'm guessing Porto and Barcelona will be pretty ridiculous odds. Yeah, 1.33 on Porto, 1.06 on Barcelona. Okay, so we've got a few solid group bets there to qualify. What we will do now is take a look at parlay legs. So teams that I think are virtually guaranteed to qualify, and I think putting them all into a parlay might potentially be one of those risky bets that actually isn't that risky, because some of these clubs are so likely to qualify that just by putting a few of them into a parlay we'll probably get a decent return. Even though I can't log in to my account here, because then they'll know what my account username is and ban me, because the bookies are bastards. So how are we going to calculate it? How are we going to calculate it? I tell you what I'm going to do to calculate it. Obviously, boys, you know me. I make a lot of money betting on sports, right? We go to my YouTube channel and we got some videos showing me making profit on betting accounts. And then what happens is, if you make a few thousand betting on a betting account, the betting site will shut you down, and a lot of people don't know this happen. If I log in, if I click this login button now and I log in, you see my username, this account is just going to get shut down. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to log into my account so we can see what the odds are on some of these parlays and accumulators, and then I can blur it out and I won't be at risk of getting my account closed. So I'll take a quick break. We'll be back just in a sec. Alright guys, we're back to do the parlays and the accumulators. So I've actually switched betting sites over to Betfair just because the user interface on like the bet slip is a lot better on Betfair, so you'll be able to like actually see the parlay and accumulators as we build it, whereas on Bet365 it tends to jump up and down every time you go back to see the actual teams. It like minimizes the bet slip, which is going to be annoying for you guys if it's minimizing, expanding all the damn time. If it's on the screen all the time like Betfair have it, then you can see the parlays and the accumulators. One thing that I have found that is a small issue though is that you can't put two teams from the same group in the same parlay and accumulator. So for example, if we wanted to put Bayern Munich and Man United into this parlay and accumulator to qualify, we couldn't do it, but that's fine. We'll just build multiple parlays and accumulators in a situation where we may want to do that. So the first parlay and accumulator that I want to build is like a relatively safe one with teams that are extremely likely to go through. So Bayern Munich can definitely go in there. Group B, yeah, Arsenal can definitely go in there. Group C, Real Madrid for sure. Group D, this one is a little bit trickier for me. This one is a bit trickier. Inter should go through here, but I don't love their odds. Do I? Yeah, we'll put Inter in. Inter should make it out of that group. Group E, I'm going to swerve that group. I'm not too confident in Atletico or Lazio at those odds going through. This group is the group of death. I'm not touching that one. Man City, the odds are not really going to change. They're not worth putting in. The odds are too steep. We will put RB Leipzig in though. They should sail through. And then Group H, what are the odds? Barcelona. What does adding Barcelona and Man City do to the odds? Not a lot. Not a lot. 2.35. In fact, if we put in 2.35 is not bad. So I think that should be our foundation. I would be extremely surprised if any of these teams didn't qualify to the knockout stages. So that is our first parlay and accumulator. Now what we're going to do, the odds on that are 2.35 plus 135. What we're going to do now is add different teams to that foundation. Put in teams, take them out to get different combinations of parlays and accumulators. to hopefully build some nice bets. So what we're going to be doing now, this is like the safest parlay accumulator, and we're going to be scaling up to go with really risky ones, which will potentially have a really big payoff. And like I say, I'm not the biggest fan of parlays and accumulators. I hardly ever bet them. I will only ever make an exception with tournaments like this, where you can kind of balance the variance out over multiple games. We used the example earlier on of where, you know, if you bet all these teams to win in the first match week of the Champions League, very unlikely you're going to win, because there's going to be some curveballs in there. You know, maybe Real Madrid get a player sent off in the first 10 minutes and then they lose that game, and that busts your parlay accumulator. Whereas here, if one of these teams have a bad night, then they've got the next 4 games in the group stages to make up for it. So I don't mind parlays, accumulators in those situations. So what I want to do is start to scale up the risk now to get better payoffs. So what I'm looking to do to add to these is throw in teams at relatively decent odds that are a little bit riskier to qualify, but very, very likely to qualify. Or not very, very likely, but like riskier ones, right? So we were talking about teams like Sevilla, teams like Newcastle, tossing them in, see what it does to the odds. Because right now we're at 2.35. If we pop Newcastle in, we can see that the odds double, right? So that's another parlay accumulator that I like. Those 6 teams and Newcastle odds of 4.23. Let's take Newcastle out. Let's add in Sevilla. And that takes the odds to, we can't do it. We have to remove Arsenal, which is fine. We take Arsenal out. That's 3.93. Don't mind that. That's another one as well that I would look at. We'll pop Arsenal back in. I know this is probably very confusing, but hopefully you can keep track of this. So we got our foundation there at 2.35. Any more, slightly more risky ones, but that have a pretty good chance of going through. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Lazio gives you 3.92. I actually really like that. I actually really like that. That's pretty good. 3.92. We like that. Feyenoord will have a good shot of going through because they're home. They're brilliant at home. But they are very open at the back, and they likely to get punished against teams as dangerous going forward as Lazio. So we've had the Newcastle in, we've had the Sevilla in. That's about it, to be honest. That is about it. So those are like 3 or 4 parlays accumulators that we've got so far. Now let's add Sevilla and Newcastle in and see what that does to the odds. So then we've got to remove Arsenal again. There we go. So that jumps to 7.0. So I quite like that. We've got 6 as the foundation, and then you mix in Sevilla and Newcastle at 7.07. I like that a lot. Okay, so now if we put Arsenal back in, are there any like really risky ones that could potentially give us a huge payday? I'd be surprised if Galatasaray or Copenhagen went through there. PSV have got a shout for sure. Lons have been poor this season. We won't go with PSV though, because Sevilla are brilliant in European tournaments. Real Madrid, Napoli should sail through. This group, tricky group. Atletico, Lazio, Feyenoord. Feyenoord do have an outside chance, to be fair. AC Milan, Dortmund, not too sure about that. No, actually, we'll leave it. I think those parlay accumulators, I think it's not bad what we've already got. We don't want to go crazy. So there's 4 or 5 parlay accumulators there for you for the group stages. Now let's see if we've got any specials that we could hit. So Group A specials. So Bayern Munich to remain unbeaten in the group stages. 2.80. That's an interesting one because their group is very, very weak. United away would be the game which could be tricky there, but no, I would not go with that. Let's take a look. Bayern Munich to score +1 goals in each group stage match. I think that means more than 1 goal. It would be 0.5 goals if you're just one goal in a game, so we'll avoid that as well. Let's see. Harry Kane to score 5+ goals in group stages. No. They're all dead. Group B. Actually, I don't like these props, which is making the video longer than it needs to be. So anyway, I hope you liked that video. Some bets for the Champions League. Don't forget, I also offer betting tips on football. If you're interested, head on over to my website, MMABettingTips.com. Link for that in the description below. And for the next 2 days, I'll be dropping videos like this for the Europa League and also the Europa Conference League. When they're out, I'll leave links for them in the description below. But if they haven't been posted yet, keep an eye out for them because they'll be coming Tuesday and Wednesday, the week that the group games are starting. So thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video for the Europa League. Nice one, guys. Bye.